Hi there, and welcome to the live stream. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you want to ask a question, if you could kindly type it in the chat with QQQ in front of it so we really see it so clearly. If you want to jump the queue, then you can do a super chat, which will give you priority over everybody else. But also, the most important thing is it supports the channel. So don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you really enjoy the show. If you want to put a comment in, that'd be great too. Anyway, sit back and enjoy the live stream. Hope you enjoy it. Yeah, I did that.
Boom.
To save me saying it every week. Boom. Yes, boom.
Incredible.
We're going to go straight to the question. Oh, but no, I've got a question for you. What have you been doing this week?
What have I been doing this week?
Yes.
A pretty boring 2 weeks for me. So my journey recently over the last 10 to 14 days began with attending the Keto Brain Health Conference in Manchester, to which you were there. And our good friend Dr. Abs also came along and joined us there. I spoke at that event along with the likes of Dr. Anthony Chaffee, Dr. Zoe Harcoom, Dr. Rachel Brown, Ivor Cummins was also there, obviously Ben Hunt and Heather, who were hosting the event. It was a fantastic event and an absolute honor to be sharing the stage with people of that caliber within our space. And then the following day, so that was on the Saturday, on the Sunday at 2 a.m., I departed from my accommodation and flew over to Spain, or Gibraltar, in fact, and then made my way over to a monastery in Spain to spend a few days there, again with Dr. Chaffee, and to deliver another presentation at the Carnivore conference in Spain. So, yeah, that's what I've been up to. What about you?
Well, missing you, obviously.
No chance.
While you've been here, of course, the big news has been that Element and maltodextrin in their electrolytes. I know you're too much of a gentleman to raise that. One of the things I would say about you, Richard, and I'm going to say it because I'm not ashamed to say it, is if you've got 9 ingredients in something, you say, I've got 9 ingredients, and I know that's what's in it, 9 ingredients. So sometimes it seems, oh, Richard's got more ingredients than other people. Yeah, because they cover it under natural flavors. I had this with a drink a few years ago, LaCroix or something, where everyone was saying how great it was and had natural flavors in it. And I kept saying, well, what's in the natural flavors? And now there's a lawsuit about that. I'm not saying Element will be the same, but I do think if you've got an ingredient in there, don't hide it. It's just really that simple. So you missed that. You missed Jeremy Clarkson having a heart attack and being told that even though he smokes and drinks excessively, it's obviously the red meat. And of course, the biggest news of all, of course, the biggest, everyone's going to think, oh, it's Trump on Rogan. No, Dr. Abs did a live last night and it lasted 5 hours or just under 5 hours on his own. Very admirable. Very admirable. He's obviously in training for a 24-hour live stream. But with that in mind, he's got a question. Can you say why you prefer stevia over other sweeteners?
Why I prefer stevia. So there are a number of sweeteners that I prefer to others. If we look at things like aspartame and sucralose and so on and so forth, these are generic sweeteners and they contain lots of nasties and are detrimental to our health. Things like, and they will also elicit an insulin response. Polyols usually get the green light within our space, but not all polyols are created equal. Amongst polyols, we have the likes of erythritol, xylitol, maltitol, and so on and so forth. Erythritol, out of the polyols, which are natural, by the way, is the only one that does not absorb in the body and appears not to elicit an insulin response. Xylitol and maltitol can still be absorbed by as much as 65% as carbohydrates. So even though the backs of the labels of the products that use those sweeteners can legally say that the carbs are not absorbed, this is a fallacy. Up to 65% are still absorbed. So erythritol is the winner out of the polyols. That said, erythritol is difficult to use in a product because of its mass. So if we were to make, so my electrolytes, if we were to add erythritol to this, the amount of the powder within the tub, and there's a tub, but that's my little money jar, but you get the idea. So the amount of powder within the tub would take up more space. Therefore, the serving size would be bigger and the product wouldn't work so well. Stevia, because it's so sweet, and again, it is natural, it's a lot easier to use to flavor products. Doesn't it elicit an insulin response in many, or at least most people? It can do in some, but there are always exceptions to the rule, and it seems to be very few and far between. I think in my entire career with creating electrolytes, there's only 1 or 2 people that I think have ever potentially elicited an insulin response to stevia, and this was minor. So from a low carb perspective, for someone looking to adhere a low carb lifestyle, stevia is a fantastic choice. There are others that I use and others that I believe are beneficial. Glycerol is another one, which is a type of fat. It's a sweet fat, which is what I use in my keto bars. So there's no stevia or erythritol used in those. So I use glycerol in that. And I think I may even be the only person, at least in the UK, that uses glycerol within the bars, and also the lowest in lectins and phytates for the size of the bar, and the lowest in carb, at least I believe, in the UK for the low carb ketogenic market. Other ones, monk fruit seems to be pretty good, but stevia is so versatile, so it is a product that I use in the electrolytes. Now, I've got the unflavored version there. As you can see, it's highly concentrated, and it's actually the astaxanthin that gives it this color. So there's no artificial colors added. Again, all of the ingredients are natural. It's astaxanthin that gives it that color. It also adds a salty and fishy taste, which is why many within the community can't stomach the unflavored unless they well into their low carb ketogenic or carnivore journey. And this is where the stevia plays a fantastic role, because we can add it to this product. It adds a little sweet taste, and it takes away the very hard, fishy, salty taste, which I love, by the way. But I am well over a decade into my ketogenic and carnivore journey, so I have no feeling or aspirations towards sweet things any longer. So I'm happy with the unflavored version, which is also available. But this is why I preference stevia over the other sweeteners.
That is a great answer, actually. You didn't need 5 hours. I tell you what, Abs was a superstar last night, mate. He mentioned you quite a few times, which is really good. So a big shout out to Abs. And there's already a few people in the chat saying, is it available? Yeah, you just got to go to his channel from 8:30 tonight, actually. Go to his channel and then just watch it on a playback, because we're here for an hour and then we do half an hour on school. So, you can't go now, but yes, it's there and it's brilliant. Of course, it's brilliant. Right. Dennis recently had stomach nausea and diarrhea every night for a few hours after meat-only dinner. Stopped it by walking for 25 minutes after dinner. Why would this help? Drinking water makes it feel worse. Yeah, well, we can answer that. Motility of the small intestine. That's why walking helps. I recommend people who have digestive issues and type 2 diabetes, 2 very good examples. I always try and recommend people have a walk after eating. So why would drinking make you feel worse? Well, you're diluting your stomach acid. So I think that's the 2 things. I'm sure I've missed Richard, because I can do a little sort of short answer, and then Richard can give me a nice big answer while I put the link in the chat to school or something. So yes, what do you reckon, Richard?
Yeah, fantastic question. And look, I think you've nailed it there. I mean, we don't always have to get into a lot of detail in regards to these things. But look, it is quite common as we gravitate into the lifestyle, and it could be a number of factors. It could be the protein, or it could be the fat. And yes, only meat, but we do find fat within meat products. And typically what happens is when we consume meals that are very high in fat and we're not used to them, this releases bile in higher quantities than it's used to. And bile is usually absorbed or reabsorbed in the small intestine. But if you're not used to consuming that much fat within your meal, then this finds its way into the lower gut and can lead to diarrhea. So it is quite common. No, we find it the opposite also. We tend to find coming into this that it does that, diarrhea, and then we find that that person will get constipation. So it almost seems to go full circle before we end up coming out the other end. But it is an adaptation phase. We've spent our entire existence living a lifestyle which is not optimal, and avoiding these foods which are incredibly nutritious and good for us. We've been consuming lots of carbohydrate, and what happens is that our gut microbiome, they thrive on what we consume. So if we feed ourselves sugar, then the gut microbes they grow in order to process that sugar, for example. And then as we transition into a more meat-based lifestyle, the gut microbiome will gravitate into processing those foods. And this is why when we consume compounds that we look for fermented foods and things to try to boost the alpha diversity in the gut, they can confer a benefit in the short term, but if you do not continue to consume that compound, those foods, then the gut microbes will die off, because you're no longer consuming enough of that. And it's the same as we start consuming meat. So we start consuming more animal proteins, and then there's a process called die-off within the gut, where the gut microbes, which are used to process in the fruits and the vegetables and the carbohydrates, are dying off, and this can lead to instant diarrhea. So look, consistency is key, and you hit the nail on the head in regards to moving and motility of the gut. Consistency is key. Just stick with it. What you could try to do, and I found is highly beneficial, is reducing the meal size and consuming more of them. So eating more frequently throughout the day and eating less each meal initially. And the reason for this is there is an adaptation period, but we tend to dive straight into this, especially the women. Because we're told that fasting is fantastic and we should only eat one meal a day, or mad, and so on and so forth. But women don't tend to do so well with prolonged periods of fasting. Men do, which is why we tend to jump, straight in with it also. But it does come with time. I think we need to adapt into this and do it incrementally. I don't fast. If someone were to ask me, do you fast? I don't fast. I just eat intuitively. It just so happens that I tend to eat once a day or twice a day because I'm not hungry. If I'm hungry, I'll eat, but I don't actively fast anymore. So sometimes we need to make amends during the transition period. So lower the frequency, lower the meal size, and keep pushing forward, and everything will fall into place.
How old are you, Rich? That is a question someone's asked.
How old am I? I'm nearly 41.
41. There you go. Excellent.
I don't look absolutely incredible currently, because I raced again this morning, so my face is all over the place. I did a cross-country race over the sand today, which was absolutely brutal. And I've got some news as well as we get into this. Let's get into some questions, but I've got some news from our good buddy Michael Davis, who competed in Kona World Championships yesterday or this morning. I can never remember the time difference, but we'll get into that. Let's knock some questions and we can talk about this.
Okay. Well, this is more of a statement, but it's ever so good. Blood glucose level is down 20 milligrams per deciliter in 7 days. Perhaps it's all coming together. Always a nice live stream, guys. Thank you very much. It's always good to hear success stories as well. Well, yeah, I mean, that's a nice segue. I've actually nearly finished a second edition update of my Bloods book. I'm going to show you something about blood glucose if we've got a chance. Should I do it now? Let's do that, actually. Very quickly. I'm going to just share a screen, couple of screens, because one of the things I've added is all about the transporters that are in the body. And I think you can see here, actually, that's not very good for the screen share because it's cutting off. Let me just get rid of that. Let's hide that comment, and then we can see the whole thing. We're seconds. Just bear with me 1 second. Let's hide that. There we go. Right. Okay. So this is going into the book, so you don't need to write this all down. But basically, it's looking at each transporter and how much, as a percentage, is of glucose is going through those transporters. And GLUT1s get 41%
sorry, 45%. It's not insulin dependent. You might like this column actually about how many rely on insulin. It's only one, the GLUT4. The reason GLUT1 is such a big sink of glucose is because it's the brain and the red blood cells. So it's interesting because we're often told about glucose that it's all about the GLUT4 and insulin and stuff like that. But my book is actually looking at the whole picture, looking at how we get rid of blood glucose. There's a question coming up which might be interesting. So yes, so I've been doing that, and that blood glucose down 20 milligrams per deciliter is fantastic. So let's go to the next thing. Right. We just had our second successful meetup here in Florida. And my question is, are either of you traveling to the USA anytime soon? Would love to hear. I would love to have you for one of our meetups in Florida. All the best. Are you due to the USA at all?
Well, that's fantastic. One hell of an invitation. I'd love to. I have no plans currently to travel to the States, but I would love to. It is something that I've been contemplating for quite some time, so I will keep you updated and I will let you know. But thank you. What about you, Steve?
Yeah. Well, yes. You need to watch this space. There are some things afoot, actually. So, yes, maybe next year. Right. Now, this now ties into what I just said about how much glycogen on average to fuel and maintain full muscle size with carbs. Well, forget the bit with carbs before spilling over to fat and then maintain. Let's just talk about glycogen in the liver and in the muscles. So Rich and I might have slightly different figures. So I would say the liver, it's about 80 to 100 grams of glycogen. That's irrelevant of carbs, all right? Because that's what it's going to store. When you eat anything, it's looking to store glycogen, okay? So, you know, even if you're eating all meat and fats, it will still make glucose because there's gluconeogenesis. You do need some glucose. You know, your red blood cells need glucose. So it's going to be 80 to 100 grams of glycogen in your liver and about 300 to 500 grams in your muscles. That's what I think, but I'm sure Rich can go into a bit more detail.
Yeah, also the brain also does need some glucose. The glutaminergic neurotransmitters. Yeah, but it's, you know, many of them can use ketones, and there are there's some interesting research I've been looking into recently, and it may actually be possible to for the brain in its entire aspect to use ketones. So some research I've been looking into, but as far as we're aware currently to date, the glutaminergic neurotransmitters, they need rapid fire energy from glucose. So we do need those via GLUT1, GLUT3, as you just mentioned. But the hippocampus needs it through GLUT4. So we do need glucose. So come back to the question. Yeah, agree. 100 milligrams for the liver. That's why when I'm bulking, I'd quite often consume fruit. So when I was carb loading before an event, when I was bodybuilding, I'd consume fruit because fructose goes direct to the liver. I'd fill those stores first and then get on to muscle size or fill in the intracellular myolipids and so on and so forth. So the amount, I mean, 350 grams you're talking to fully fill muscle glycogen, Steve, is that right? Is that what you say?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at my previous research because it is going to depend on the amount of muscle that person has. Now, to put it into perspective, I used to consume, so I would do a 4-day refeed, 2 carb refeeds via white rice because white rice is lectin free. And then the rest would come from fat, which would happen first, by the way. So we'd fill the intracellular myolipids and would pack the fat out in the muscle before putting the glycogen. And I would consume on day one around 900 grams of carb on day one without overspilling. Now, what this doesn't account for is the amount we use for energy. So I'm not consuming 900, I'm storing 900 because we still need to operate and move around. So it would depend on how busy I was, how active I was, how mobile I was. But during those days, I would be not training. I'd be barely moving and concentrating on filling my muscle glyco with those carbs on those 2 days. And when I believed that they were full, I would consume exogenous ketones, so they would be preferenced for energy. Ketones take oxidative priority, which means that they're going to store the glyco. But yeah, I mean, that sounds like a fair number, I think, Steve. It's going to differ depending on athlete to athlete and person to person. But the best way is to make sure you use a caliper. So periodically through many times through the day, what I used to do is measure different points around my belly button and towards the end, where we really gain that fat. And I would measure those with a cheap set of calipers, like 3 or 4 pounds or a couple of dollars. And this would allow me to track and maintain. I'd see the weight go up on the scale, but the measurement on the calipers wouldn't change. And I would push to the point where I would see a slight increase because I want to make sure that everything is full. But I was depleted to the point that I was 2% body fat. So any overspill was, you're talking 2 point something, which is still unbelievably lean. But then I would maintain it, as I say, with the exogenous ketones. But yeah, those figures seem fair to me, Steve. I think it is going to depend on the person to person, depending on muscle mass.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Super chat. As we mentioned at the beginning in my wonderful video, which I'm going to improve, by the way, and make it slightly better. We got a question here from Julie, who's done a super chat. So it's great support. Thank you, Julie. Good evening, Stephen. But it is Stephen and Richard. I think maybe because he wasn't around for a week. Everyone forgets. It's show business, mate. I've recently switched from vegan diet to carnivore. I recently did a pH test. It was 4.5, very acidic. Will eventually move into a more alkaline with time? I hope. Well, let's hope not, actually. That is the range. I've did over 15 years of rehab, 10 years of which were private blood testing. And that's going to be a urine test. And 4.5 is pretty on the money. To be more alkaline, I don't necessarily think you want to do that. It's all about thinking that that's going to have an effect on your blood, and it just won't. It won't have any effect because you've got to understand the pH, the logarithmic scale. Okay, so if you think that and I know you've changed, so I really appreciate that, but if you think, oh, that's acidic, so I'm going to eat let's say some broccoli to change the acidity of my body. Well, your stomach acid is around 2.5 to 3.5. On the pH scale, it's logarithmic. So from 3 to 4, it's the power of 10, and then from 3 to 5, it's the power of 100. So basically what I'm saying is a piece of veg normally is about 1 million times less acidic than the stomach, or the stomach is 1 million times more acidic than that piece of vegetation. You can't really change your pH of your blood. It's so tightly regulated. It's actually one of the most tightly regulated things in the body. And even intense exercise will barely touch your blood pH. All right. So I wouldn't worry about that, to be honest. There are other pH tests that women can do, by the way, if you're really interested in that, but that's a bit more of a personal pH thing that you can have tested. But the urine, if you're really worried about it and you want to keep it, I mean, for £10, you can get 100 tests. There's 100 test strips in there. This one's called One Step, and it will test everything like nitrates and protein, pH, blood, specific gravity, ketones, bilirubin, and glucose and stuff like that. I think when you come to this way of eating, you'll realize that having a really good stomach acidity is actually key to really good digestion. So I think that the problem with the vegan vegetarian arena, and I take my hat off to anyone that's trying to be healthy, whatever way they're eating. If they're thinking about their food, that's great. You do not need to worry about acidity other than not having enough stomach acid, it not being acidic enough. So it needs to be acidic because that's the whole point of it. It kills pathogens. It's the first line of defense for everything that you eat, and also breaks down your food. So yeah, it's a great question, but I would not be worried about that in your urine. And also remember, urine is one of the mechanisms where it will regulate. So if it's doing that, it's regulating your blood pH. If you had a blood pH reading, I guarantee it will be on the money, absolutely on the money, because your urine is doing the thing that it needs to do. So hopefully that's helpful. Let's go to the next question. But thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate it. And I hope that answer was good value for money. Right. We're going back to MJ. So two parts to his question. He's 5'11", 188 pounds, 10% body fat and muscular.
So that's a good personal ad, mate. You know, that's going to get a lot of a lot of people interested. Not easy to answer. I know it's tricky. Just your thoughts. White rice I use when I do around training. Been carny 3.5 years, but look much better when carbed. Go on then, Rich. You can talk about this.
Yeah, so tricky with also white rice. So white rice is fantastic again as it's lectin free. Look, it's better to consume after training than before if you're looking to maximize the glyco within the muscle for aesthetic purposes. You don't need it during training or before training. And there are an occasion in which you might be able to lift more. And this is getting way too deep into the weeds now, but it comes down to volume in the muscle. So carbs will add glycogen to the muscle, which could, in theory, add more leverage, because for every 1 gram of glyco, we add 3 to 4 grams of water. So you may add more leverage. But the reality is, if you are adapted, which you would be being 3.5 carnivore, the muscle will send lactate back to the liver, and it will create glucose via gluconeogenesis and send it back to the muscle at a higher rate than we can get from when we compare it to a carb athlete. So we don't need carb pre-training. Post-training may be beneficial for size, but as you adapt into this, you should be able to fill the muscle glyco naturally, along with things like creatine and sodium and potassium and so on and so forth. Yes, you're going to look more aesthetically pleasing if you add carbs in also, but then you're going to take away some of the benefits from being carnivore. One of the biggest, and again, how many carbs are you consuming to, I've just basically said that I can consume stupid amounts of carbohydrate and maintain a ketogenic state. But if you do this for prolonged periods of time, you will lose your ability to be ketogenic. We don't want to be doing it every day unless it's small amounts. And this amount is going to differ from person to person. Generally, it's less than 20 grams. Some people can get away with 50 a day, and others who are training extensively can consume as much as 100 grams of carbs each day, but and maintain a ketogenic state. But that's the key to everything, is this, our ability to use ketones for everything within the body. That's why we live this lifestyle. Yes, we're removing all the toxic compounds from the plants, but the increase in glutathione, the improvement with the glutamate to GABA ratio, the increase in NAD+ to NADH, all this sort of all of these benefits, blocking NLRP3 inflammasome, and so on and so forth. Why would you want to be consuming lots and lots of carbs if health and well-being, is indeed the goal? It would be my main question. But if you are consuming, you need to keep them low, and preferably after training. But it's, our good friend Alan Reeves likes the carb cycle. He'll put X amount of carb in a number of days each week. But I think even recently he's tried a more stricter version, and I think he's seen way more benefit with removing the carb. We're always tempted to put them back in, but it's, it's just simply the case as we've adapted, and when we become more adapted, that we don't need excessive amounts of carb unless it's for, a performance sport on the day. And even then, I would argue, it's Mikey Davis competed recently, last night or yesterday, whenever I lose track of the time in Kona. But he competed in the World Championships in Kona Ironman. So we had a goal to complete this in sub 9 hour, but it was a big ask. He didn't do the sub 9, but he came in at 9 hour 11. And the reason for this was 5K into the run, the temperature was 30 degrees and the humidity was it just wasn't going to happen. But he came in 9 hours 11, taking the Welsh record. So he's now, the fastest Welshman ever to compete in Kona, which is absolutely incredible. And he's trained for these races on zero carb, my electrolytes, exogenous ketones, MCT, so on and so forth. But he did use carb on the day, but he kept it incredibly low, an incredibly low amount of carbohydrate to compete in that. So he's used that as a tool on the day, but he hasn't used it to build muscle or to increase size or even for athletic performance. And this is something that I want to get him on a live, maybe, to discuss in more detail in regards to, to how we went through that. But Anyway, let's move on to the next question. Apologies.
Carnivore Muscle, Jonathan's just competed, and he's just telling you that he loaded up 3 kilograms between Thursday and Saturday before his show, purely with higher fat.
Awesome.
I used Mason's meats, pemmican bars, and carnivore bars to get the fat up.
And he looked incredible.
It did look incredible. I was only amped up guy on stage with 2 scoops Keto Pro BHB vanilla, half scoop of Keto Pro pre-workout. Worked a treat. Shout out to Richard for creating a great product. There you go. So,
and he looked absolutely incredible, didn't he? I don't know if you guys have seen the pictures. Yeah, super big, pumped and lean. And it just goes to show that you don't need the carb in order to do that. I mean, 3 kilograms is an incredible amount. And it just goes to show that, the more muscle mass we have, the more that we can store in regards to that. But it's, there's more than one way to skin the cat. And I think Jonathan looked absolutely incredible. And thanks for the shout out. I'm glad that you used the BHB to stay nice and full. Awesome.
We've got a question coming up about the BHB in a minute. Matthew, I'll answer this because I think last week or the week before I mentioned it. So are linen clothes actually more healing than other types? Do they promote blood flow? What about linen having 5K megahertz vibration frequencies? Is that beneficial? Thoughts? Any evidence? Well, yeah, linen is more breathable. I mean, that is a fact. And the phenomena is called moisture wicking. So if you have a man-made thing and you get sweaty, it feels more damp than linen. That's it, basically. And it does appear to be more antimicrobial as well. And I can give you a great example because the last time I was in New York, a long time ago, before the restrictions, when the world wasn't mad and all that, I bought some great stuff from Nike. I wouldn't now, by the way, but it stinks. And it's a known problem. When you start to sweat, which you would think sportswear would be able to cope with, however much you washed it, it still had a slight smell and you had to soak it overnight. And it was a big thing. Actually, I went on the Nike website and it was, we know about this problem. So even with all this high technology, with the big companies selling huge amounts of clothing, they were still getting it wrong. So, yeah, I tried to go with natural fibers. And we've done all the bedding and everything like that. We've just gone back to natural fibers. And I would say, I sleep better, I think, slightly. But there's no scientific evidence. As to the frequency, everything has a frequency. And people think that's a bit woo-woo. But even NASA is looking at stuff like this. All right, so yes. But there's no really decent science about it because there's not much money to be made out of it. But I do believe that we've got to look at, in the future, maybe look at all the frequencies around us. Obviously phones and laptops and everything. We're being exposed to things that we shouldn't really be exposed to so much. So it is a valid question, but probably not for this this forum. But when you carnivore, you're trying to be optimal. So every little bit you can do it. So that's that.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. Tall cedars. How many types of rashes are there? And how are they cured? And how are they cured by prescription medications? Well, that's an interesting one. Go on, Rich. Sorry,
Steve. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm unsure how many types of rashes. I should imagine hundreds and hundreds. But are they cured by prescription drugs, or do they usually reoccur? I've suffered with many rashes and skin conditions during my life. Sorry, Steve. I'll just say what I've got, and you can get on to the rest of this. I used to take topical solutions and creams for many years in order to combat severe acne, boils, and dry skin. Yes, it seemed to work in the short term, but it wouldn't cure it. They always came back. The only thing that has allowed me to achieve complete resolution is diet. And the reason for this is that skin rashes, in most cases, comes from within. It comes from intestinal permeability. So when we poke holes in the lining of our gut, usually via compounds like gluten, wheat germ agglutinin, phytohemagglutinin, things that are found in plant compounds, they cause the release of a molecule called zonulin, and this causes a gap to appear in the tight junction between the epithelial cells. And this basically leads to leaky gut or intestinal permeability, which is the root cause of autoimmune disease. Autoimmune can manifest itself in a number of ways, and in the skin is one of those ways. So if you suffer with a skin condition, it's probably and more likely to come from this intestinal permeability, which is from the foods that you are consuming. And this is why I was plastered. I I haven't done my hair today, Dr. Abs. I've been running,
Yes.
but it's all, yeah, I haven't made it nice and pretty for you. Apologies. I'm even sitting at my desk wearing joggers, but I've still put a nice shirt on for you. Look, I'm sitting.
At least
I'm
you've got some trousers on, mate. At least
I've
you've got
some
trousers on.
joggers and trainers with my shirt on, just purely for presentation purposes. I'll make sure my hair's done next time. Cheeky gits. But look, intestinal permeability. This is where most skin conditions are coming from. Change your diet, and your requirement for most of these topical solutions will go away. And if you do require any, then tallow-based products would be my preference over anything else. Natural fats.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you were cutting me off, whether you thought I was going to say something contrary to that, but skin is an organ, and it's going to respond to nutrients and nutrition, or bad nutrition, or bad exposure to different environments. And cortisol, yeah, well, basically, yes, because what's making that happen? So in answer to your question, how do the medications work? Well, most medications work by inhibiting something, don't they? So they reduce inflammation, or they block histamine receptors, those sort of things. So it is not really curing the problem. It is reducing the body's reaction to them. That's the thing. It's not getting rid of them. So, for instance, athlete's foot, that's a pretty good example of a skin condition. 30 years I had that, 35, something like that. And I tried everything, absolutely everything to get rid of that athlete's foot. Tape, powders, acids, powdering my trainers, powdering my shoes, a hairdryer after I'd had a bath or a shower. None of it worked. As soon as I went carnivore, it just went. I used to have a stress rash. You know, Richard's had skin problems. We both had skin problems. We're sitting here, the picture of wonderfulness. I'm 60, by the way. Richard's 40. You know, so we've been around the block a few times, and basically, we're doing fine with this way of eating. Skin is a thing that can be assisted by other treatments. Definitely you can improve it with stuff, but if you want to cure it, you need to make sure that you're eating the right things and you've got the right environment for your skin to flourish. That's what I would say. Right, let's go on to the next one. Oh, this is a hot topic at the moment. From Josh. Do you agree, as written by Dr. Sarah Myhill in a blog, that iodine does everything that vitamin C does and more, and that you shouldn't take vitamin C if taking iodine and it interferes?
Yeah, fantastic question. Unsure, I haven't read it. Iodine is incredibly important to the body, but coming back, let's look at vitamin C in isolation. How important is vitamin C? Yes, we need it in the body. Do we, it acts as an antioxidant, although the body has lots of processes for antioxidants, by the way. But how much vitamin C do we actually need? We don't need an awful lot. Vitamin C is found in animal proteins, for example. So, I mean, a 12-ounce steak contains around 12 milligrams of vitamin C, and this is more than enough for everything that the body needs. So we don't need any vitamin C from fruit or supplementation. So, I mean, why would you want to take vitamin C with an iodine supplement anyway? Because everything is achieved through diet and lifestyle. Does it interfere? Unsure. I think Steve's got something. There we are. Fantastic. Let's get into this, and Steve.
Right. Now, this is just one example of why other people think we need more vitamin C. Again, this is a graphic that's going into my Bloods book, but it goes into some other subjects. Okay. So when you eat non-heme iron, you need a ton of vitamin C, because the enterocyte has a thing called vitamin C ferroreductase, and it needs vitamin C to take Fe3+, the ferric form of iron, and convert it into the heme iron, ferrous. Okay, that's what happens. So it needs tons of vitamin C. So if you're a vegan vegetarian, if you're on a standard diet, this is where your recommended daily allowance comes up. I will get to the actual question. Okay, so if you've got a normative range of what vitamin C we should require, and you're basing it on for somebody eating lots of plants, and this vitamin C ferroreductase needing vitamin C to get the iron into your enterocytes and then off into your body, well, if you're eating this way, you've got ferrous iron, you've got heme iron. You don't need that vitamin C reductase. You don't need it. So there are so many examples of this, and it is the normative ranges that are going to cause a problem. So if you are, and I mean, I love Sarah Myhill, I think she's great, but many people do still use the normative ranges to make their assumptions. So if you are overdosing, so I would now say the recommended daily allowance is an overdose of vitamin C, you might see that it would, well, I actually don't see how it would fight for receptors with iodine, because they do very different things. But if she's seeing that in patients, see, I definitely believe clinical experience is really key to this. If she's seeing that in patients, well, is it because they are having too much vitamin C or supplementing with vitamin C? So you can do a blood test actually, which nails on that you've got too much vitamin C. The LDH reading, lactose dehydrogenase, will show you if it's elevated. I think if I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but basically, you know, in the week I actually said to someone, are you supplementing with vitamin C, because that's messing you up. So it could be that, you see. This is it. It isn't necessarily that vitamin C and iodine don't get together. It could be the dosage. If someone is saying you are low on vitamin C, incorrectly even assuming that because they haven't kept up with the research, oh, this person's done carnivore, so they're getting no vitamin C, which, as Richard rightly has covered, there is vitamin C in what we eat. And it's possibly actually the perfect dosage if you're eating to hunger and satiety. So I think there's more to it. I'm not knocking anyone, by the way. When we talk about element, I wasn't actually knocking Rob Wolf there. I love Rob Wolf. I think it's great. But what I'm trying to say is we need to be more explicit with everything that we're talking about. If you've got a thing with ingredients in, just tell us what's in it. That's it. Then we can make a decision. And it's the same when you come up with a theory. You can be vague about it and say, well, like, don't take them together. Well, how did you arrive at that? Because I do believe that we do need some vitamin C, as Rich just said, but not maybe the recommended daily allowance. And certainly a few of the problems I've seen in the past, especially in the last year, has been people overdosing with vitamin C supplementation. Iodine, by you know, just a quirk of fate, I think because 6 months ago I really started to push the iodine clearance test, is a brilliant indicator of whether you need iodine. And I think she says you don't need to do the test. Well, that's true also. You don't have to do the test, but you can do the test. You can do the thing where you can rub it on your skin and see if the color disappears, and that shows whether you're deficient or not. But there's an even more simple thing about the test, and that is if you're doing it at home, for instance, and they send you a tablet now rather than a solution, you take the tablet and you feel amazing. You can pretty much say you're probably iodine deficient before you even get the result back. Because I'm now getting that, you know, maybe 1 in 10 people are saying to me, oh, thank you for the iodine clearance test. I've actually tried that. Oh, by the way, I took the tablet and wow, I felt great for about 3 or 4 days. And lo and behold, we get the test back. And yes, they are deficient in iodine. So it's a fascinating area. And sorry, I've done a Richard, but I think it's just one of those things where maybe working on the book as well at the moment, just to get that out this week. It's just reminding me of all the brilliant anecdotes, you know, including people reversing Graves' disease, you know. So I think it's a bit more nuanced than just saying don't take vitamin C and iodine together. I think we need to just look at what the figures are, whether they were supplementing, all those things. Sorry, I went into one there, Rich. Sorry about that.
Loved it. Fantastic. I tell you what does block iodine, though, is plants. The isothiocyanates that are sulforaphane. So, I mean, if you want to block iodine, start eating some vegetables. And, we find these in broccoli, kale, and spinach, and so on and so forth. These toxic compounds that compete for the absorption of iodine at the thyroid. So, if you want to block iodine absorption, go and eat your veggies.
You see, and now that's another point, isn't it? Because what are these people eating that are being looked at and told don't? Anyway, right.
And this is the reason I mentioned it, because if we're looking at kale, for example, kale contains more vitamin C per 100 grams than citrus fruits, or at least most, around 93 milligrams per 100 grams. But very little is actually absorbed because of the flavonoids. So the compounds in there, the anti-nutrients, actually prevent the body from absorbing them. So is it a case that it's the isothiocyanate found within these things that is actually damaging these readings, and that's maybe what's affecting the iodine absorption, not the vitamin C? Or are we looking at people who are supplemented with vitamin C, which isn't true vitamin C either? So yeah, I mean, we could go on and on, I guess, but let's move on.
Yes. I think I'm just trying to keep up with all the questions, by the way. My fault. Sorry, I went into one, but it is a hot topic at the moment. Right. Bacon of health, which is a pun, play on words, which is pretty good. Back in June, I went up a mountain and stayed up all night, and I caught the sunrise. I came home and went to bed at 6 a.m. It took me a week to recover. How fast do you recover after those 24-hour live streams? Pretty quickly. I'm sorry to say that. I actually had a private chat via WhatsApp with Abs today, and I was just saying 5 hours. Are you training for the 24-hour live stream? But genuinely, Rich and I have now done 2 of those, and Rich and I have spoken about we couldn't have done it when it was high carb, but genuinely they're a walk in the park. I think there's just a few things like a work. You miss 24 hours of catching up with messages. Obviously logistics of getting people in and editing the videos afterwards, so there's a little bit of extra work involved, but I don't think it took me that long to get back into the stride. What about you, Richard?
No, it didn't. I remember the first one, which we did completely fasted, by the way. We didn't eat. I had food with me because I was based in the shop at the time, and I was working from my office in the shop. But I decided that I didn't want to be stuffing my face and eating steak while we were live, so I didn't consume anything. Now, you and I were live, not live, so awake a few hours prior to that, because we were on the call, so we were awake a good 2 hours before we went live. And at the end of the 24-hour live, I went to work. Obviously, I was in my place of work, so I just went to work as normal. I did a full day's work, and then I even went on a 10K run at 6 p.m. that evening, and I didn't go to sleep until the normal sleep time. So I missed a full. My goodness, how many hours is that? I don't even know. It was a lot. I fell asleep. I woke up, and everything was back to normal. So I didn't even notice that I was awake for that prolonged period of time. I think living this lifestyle just enabled us to power through, tap into our stored fat stores, thrive on the use of the ketones that we produced. It didn't do anything detrimental to me. There was no downtime, and I think what I would add was, I remember this time it's difficult to be live for a full 24 hours and be compos mentis for that entire time. And I remember zoning out on a question. I can't remember who we had on, but somebody was talking, and you asked for my opinion. And even though I was awake, I was almost sleeping, because I remember saying to you, Steve, you have to repeat the question. I think that I was away with the fairies, but it's incredibly difficult to keep that brain fueled for a full 24 hours while being, because even though we're not talking, we're listening intently to the guest that we had on, and Dr. Kiltz was one of those guests on both of our lives. So hello, Dr. Kiltz. Fantastic comment, and thank you for that. But yeah, so if I off the back of the last one, I think we were unsure whether we were going to do another live 24-hour live, but I'm up for it if you are, Steve. So there's the gauntlet.
Yeah.
And again, maybe we need to get Kiltz back on for another fantastic presentation, as he's done for us over the last 2 years.
Robert Kiltz, MD. I think that sounds like an American series, doesn't it? A TV show. Yes, he was brilliant. Robert Kiltz, MD. Yes, but I think one of the things I did in the first one, I stood for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then I stood for most of the second one. And then I think Jonathan said, sitting down, I might look a bit more relaxed. I think it was Jonathan. Might have been Jonathan. But anyway, so now I sit. But I could do it standing, I think. So yeah, sorry, Beacon of Health or Bacon of Health. I can't really say that it took us that much. I think we could do it quite easily. I think we could just run now until tomorrow, but we have work set up. That's the thing. So Phil Richardson is asking a question. This is going to be right up your street, Richard. What's the difference between BHB ketones and MCT C8 powder? I was thinking of mixing with electrolytes in the morning, as I don't eat until 2 p.m. I want to help ketone production and lose weight.
Fantastic question. Awesome question, Phil. and a fantastic support of the channel. Thank you for that. So look, the ketones and MCT, they work via two different mechanisms, which is something that I discussed and presented on during the Keto Brain Health Conference. So we make ketones naturally in the body, which is one mechanism. The C8 will create ketones via another mechanism. So C8, which is a medium chain triglyceride, so it's a shorter chain than the longer chain fatty acids that we consume. So the longer chain, i.e. the types of fats that we consume via our diet, they go through the small intestine and they bind to chylomicrons and they're sent through the lymphatic system, and then they go to the liver, where they are either used in beta oxidation and then ketone production. So it's a long process of ketone production, whereas the MCT skips this process and it's sent directly from the small intestine through the hepatic portal vein directly to the liver, where they will create ketones, whether you are ketogenic or not. So MCTs make ketones in everybody. Exogenous ketones work differently. They don't go through that system as we ingest them and they hit the blood. They are already in their exogenous form, in their ketone form. So they will supply ketones to the brain, the body, and the heart, and the rest of the body as and when required. And what isn't used is just wasted. So we won't store fat from consuming exogenous ketones per se. Now, when we consume exogenous ketones, this actually switches off endogenous production because the body has an abundant supply. So when we take an exogenous ketone, we no longer produce any from within the body. But the C8 does create ketones from within the body. So they work differently. Now, the fear of this is if we take an exogenous ketone that we switch off endogenous production and it causes problems. But the body doesn't work this way. As the exogenous ketones come out of the system, the body will then ramp up production within the liver and the utilization via the monocarboxyl transporter. So we will actually benefit from taking exogenous ketones in some cases. If we use the ketones with the C8 MCT, this does not switch off endogenous production. And in there lies the key. This is why I use them together, because when I consume an exogenous ketone supplement with C8 MCT, this will ramp up ketone production, flood the body with ketones, give ketones to the brain, the body, and the heart. This is why I use them before I do a consultation, before I do a public speaking event, or before I compete, for example. So if you are going to mix the ketones and MCT, that's fantastic. You can mix them with the electrolytes, although I would tend to mix the MCT with the BHB and then later on maybe the MCT with the electrolytes. I wouldn't generally mix the BHB ketones with the electrolytes because they both high levels of electrolytes in different ratios, and they're both designed for different things. You can do, and I have done, but I tend not to. I tend to mix the MCT with both, but I don't tend to mix the BHB with the electrolytes. So I want to keep ketone production and lose weight. So fantastic. So take the exogenous ketones with the MCT first thing in the morning during a fasted state. This will help curb hunger. This will also ramp up ketone production and therefore your utilization of ketones as the exogenous ketones come out of the system. So this can aid weight loss. I've been incredibly low body fat since I finished bodybuilding, yet I'm still losing body fat. And I eat a lot. I eat a lot of food. I still use the exogenous ketones and MCT combo to allow me to perform during work and life in general. But I've noticed that I'm still losing weight. Yes, I'm into the running and cycling, but I don't run and cycle an awful lot. People think that I do an awful lot of running and cycling. I'm lucky if I run once a week, twice a week at best, and I've cycled 3 times all year. So it's definitely not a case that I'm losing more weight because I'm active, because I'm less active now than I've ever been, and I'm probably eating more also. So in order to do that, Phil, use the ketones with the C8 in the morning. You don't need much. If you've got the tub, 1 scoop of each will suffice. You can use more of the powder if you want to. You can use up to 3 scoops of the BHB, but 1 seems to do the trick with me. Once a day in a fasted state, and that should be ideal.
Excellent. I don't know if you can be quick on this one because we finish. on the top of the hour. Then we go over to our school community, which people can join. I'm going to put a link in the chat. There should also be a link in the description if you want to come and join our school community to see the next 30 minutes. But Bobby's asking, I was going to order some products from Keto Pro, but the shipping to the States is prohibitive. Any plans to sell products in the States? I'm interested in ketones.
So we do ship to the States. If you proceed to check out Bobby, we should be able to ship those to America. The electrolytes, the MCT and the exogenous ketones, they should all get through just fine. We do need to create an FDA prior notice for each state order. If anything has been rejected previously, it's usually to do with foods, i.e. mayonnaises and things. So don't order any of the food products per se. The mayonnaise, which is made from avocado oil, it's not my brand, it's a third-party brand. But you should be able to ship these in. And we are looking at trying to get the product to be sold directly in the States. But the ketones should be fine. The ketones shouldn't be a problem. In fact, the ketones, one type of the ketones are made in the States for us. And another type is made in China. So, I mean, all we're doing is sending these back into the States effectively. So you shouldn't have issues shipping into the States, I believe. Any problems?
Yeah, go on. What is your email? Sorry.
My email or the customer service email is info@keto-pro.co.uk. And I'll type that into the chat. Any issues, drop our customer service team an email and we'll sort you out.
Yeah. Carnivore muscle, Jonathan. I think this is an in-joke. Do boxers require specific neck exercises for extension and flexion? Well, yes, that you can do. Definitely, you can do sort of resistance band work. You know, because what you're looking at is punch resistance. So you know, you can build those muscles up. I think that's a little tongue-in-cheek remark, I'm thinking, but yes, you know this, Jonathan. You can do all this. So yeah, that is a funny question. So. What was your favorite? So one of the questions we got, we've run out of time, so I'm going to sort of screenshot the questions we haven't got to, and there's no super chats waiting. What would you say was your favorite thing about the retreat, the Spanish retreat you've just been on?
You know, everything was fantastic. It was a brilliant opportunity to speak. It doesn't take much to get me to talk. My talk there was on epigenetics. And plant toxins, and that's what I went into basic terms, and that was fantastic. But it was just a brilliant time to spend with the likes of of Dr. Chafee, and Sarah Pugh was there. She was fantastic. As you know, you've had Sarah on your podcast, and everyone else was just brilliant. We spoke with all the guests. It was just being around like-minded people for 5 days. Everybody had, we were all on the same level, and, the food was fantastic, just brilliant company. And I'm super looking forward to going back next year, which I believe tickets are on sale for.
Yeah, they are. So if you do go to the school, this is how you get to the next live. At the top, there's a community section. There's a classroom section. If you want to look at some of our courses, there's lots of free ebooks. And there's lots of things that you can do. And if you go to the calendar at the top there, what you'll see down here on Sunday, here's the live question answer we're currently doing, and here's the one at 8 p.m. And if you join, we're live on a Monday night as well, between 8 and 9. So, and we do that every single week. As you can see, that's pretty full calendar. And we add what Dr. Abs does once a month, first Thursday of the month. So, yes, it's very good. And in 2025, we're going to have some competition because Abs is doing his school, which is going to be amazing too. So it's just adding. It's adding to the community. It's not competition. That was just a joke. So, right. Okay. Thanks, everyone on YouTube for watching. Please join the school because we'd like to see you over there. If you don't, then we do appreciate the hour that you've just done with us. And I hope those questions were fully answered to your satisfaction. Did you want to say anything, Rich?
Just thank you all for listening, as always. It's absolute